Okay, class, I need you to pause the video and go grab your math book if you don't already have it. If you do, I need you to tear out page 51 out of your math book and also tear out page 53. You can pause the video and go do that if you need a moment to get those pages ready. Okay, if you are back, you are ready for lesson 1.8 in your GoMath. Now, this is going to be very similar to when we estimated with addition. Today, we're going to round and estimate to find the difference using subtraction. But one thing I want to point out, just like with addition, we are not going to use the term compatible numbers. Anytime you see the term compatible numbers, I just want you to think of rounding. We are rounding to get our estimation, okay? And then we can estimate the difference. So let's look at what they've started here. 546, they rounded it to 550. That means they rounded to the nearest 10. So we need to do the same for the other number. 209, we need to round it to the nearest 10. So find the number in the tens place. Look to the neighbor to the right. It's 9. 5 or more, raise the score. So that means my 0 is going to be raised by 1. So it becomes 210. And now I'm going to subtract. 0 minus 0 is 0. 5 minus 1 is 4. And 5 minus 2 is 3. So we are estimating that the difference in this problem will be about 340. Okay, let's keep going. Again, I want you to cross off the words or compatible numbers because we are just using rounding. Now, if you have a 2-digit number in your problem, then you need to round to the nearest 10. If you have 3 digits, then it's your choice whether you want to round to the nearest 10 or round to the nearest 100. We talked about it with addition that rounding to the nearest 10, you will have a more accurate and close estimate than if you round to the nearest 100. All right, so let's look at the first problem. 57 minus 21. These are 2-digit numbers, so I'm going to round to the nearest 10. 57, rounded to the nearest 10. I look at the tens place. Look to the neighbor to the right. 7, 5 or more. Raise the score, so that means 5 needs to go up 1, which means 57 rounded to the nearest 10 is 60. Next, 21. 21 rounded to the nearest 10. So I'm going to look at my number in the tens place. Look to the neighbor to the right. It's 1, which is less than 5, so my 2 remains the same. So 21 rounded to the nearest 10 is 20. 0 minus 0 is 0. 6 minus 2 is 4. So we're estimating that this difference will be about 40. Okay, look at the next problem. 642 minus 137. Let's round it to the nearest 100. 642 rounded to the nearest 100. Look at your number in the hundreds place. Look to its neighbor to the right, and it's 4, which is less than 5. So that tells me that my number is going to stay the same. So 642 rounded to the nearest 100 is 600. 137, we're going to round this to the nearest 100 because we want to round them the same way. 137 rounded to the nearest 100. Look at my number in the hundreds place. Look to its neighbor to the right. It's 3, which is less than 5. So my 1 stays the same. So 137 rounded to the nearest 100 is 100. 600 minus 100 equals 500. Okay, number 4, 374 minus 252. Go ahead and round to the nearest 100 and find the difference for your estimation. Okay. If you're not finished, you can pause the video and come back when you're ready. 374 rounded to the nearest hundred is 400. If that's not what you got, just change your answer and follow along. 252 rounded to the nearest hundred is 300. 5 or more, raise the score. 400 minus 300 is 100. So we're estimating our difference to be about 100. If you did not get the same answer as me, go back and see where you may have made a mistake. Now, coming down here to on your own, I am again going to cross off or compatible numbers because we are not using that. We are just rounding. All right. On number 5, we have 2-digit numbers. So I need to round to the nearest 10. I want you to go ahead and round both of these numbers to the nearest 10 and find the difference. Okay. If you're not finished, pause the video and come back when you are. 67 rounded to the nearest 10 is 70. 24 rounded to the nearest 10 is 20. 70 minus 20 is 50. So we're estimating this difference to be about 50. Number 6, do the same thing. Round to the nearest 10, subtract to find your estimation. Okay, if you're not finished, pause the video and come back when you are. 81 rounded to the nearest 10 is 80. 39 rounded to the nearest 10 is 40. And 80 minus 40 is 40. So we're estimating this difference to be about 40. All right, number 7. Go ahead and round this to the nearest 100 and subtract to find your estimated difference. Okay, 936 rounded to the nearest 100 is 900. 421 rounded to the nearest 100 is 400. 900 minus 400 is 500. So we're estimating this difference to be about 500. All right, let's look at these word problems on the bottom. There are 298 students in the 3rd grade. If 227 students take the bus to school, that's a clue word for estimation, about how many students do not take the bus. So it tells me the word about. That tells me I'm going to round and estimate. I'm not giving an exact answer. So the first thing I need to do is I need to figure out how do I want to round these numbers. Let's round them to the nearest 100. So 298 rounded to the nearest 100 is 300. And I'm writing this on my side because a good mathematician always shows his work. 227 rounded to the nearest 100 is 200. And it says how many students do not take the bus. So if there's 300 kids in 3rd grade and about 200 take the bus, then I need to subtract to find out how many do not take the bus. And 300 minus 200 is 100. Now, watch this. With my answer, not only am I going to have the answer 100 and the label students, but I need to have the word about to show that it's an estimation. So my answer is going to say about 100 students. It is so important that you are clear with your answers. It says how many students. There's your label, students. And it's an estimation, so we're going to say about. Now, I'm going to grab a different color and show you what it would look like. Your answer would be different if you had rounded to the nearest 10. So let's try that. 298 rounded to the nearest 10 is, we'll do it over here, still 300. And 227 rounded to the nearest 10 is 230. So if you had rounded to the nearest 10, your answer would actually be about 70 students. But your subtraction would have been a little more complicated, and you may not remember how to do this regrouping yet. We will learn this later this week. So it is totally fine to round to the nearest 100. Okay, let's go to our next problem. Go deeper. That immediately should tell you this problem is probably going to have more than one step and be a little more complicated than your other word problems. A museum has 324 oil paintings, 227 watercolor paintings, and 158 statues. About, I'm boxing it because it's clue word, how many more, that's a clue word too. About how many more oil and, oh, that's a clue word for adding. More is subtraction. About how many more oil and watercolor paintings does the museum have than, another subtraction word, statues? Oh my goodness. So it says about. So the first thing we need to do is round these numbers. Then we can figure out how we want to solve it. Okay? So 324 rounded to the nearest 100 is 300, right? 227 rounded to the nearest 100 is 200. And 158 rounded to the nearest 100 is 200. Okay, so now we've rounded. Let's see. We need to add together oil and watercolor paintings first. So I have 300 oil and 200 watercolor paintings. 300 plus 200 is 500. So I'm just going to write this out to the side. Now, about how many more oil and watercolor paintings does the museum have than statues? Well, how many more means I'm going to subtract. So I know I have 500 of these first two kinds of paintings. And I have about 200 statues. So I need to subtract the number of statues from the number of paintings so that I can find how many more. 500 minus 200 is 300. Again, this is an estimation. So I need to write the word about 300. 300 what? More paintings. So there's about 300 more paintings than there are statues. Okay? You can add the word paintings if you want to be super clear. Okay? All right, let's do another go deeper. There are 262 students in the second grade. And says add, remember? And 298 students in the third grade. If 227 students ride their bikes to school, about how many students do not ride their bikes? Okay, so first thing, we're doing about, so let's go ahead and round our numbers. 262 rounded to the nearest 100 is 300. 298 rounded to the nearest 100 is 300. And we have 227 rounded to the nearest 100 is 200. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is add the second grade students and the third grade students together. So that means 300 plus 300. which is 600. Okay, so that's step number 1. And my clue word right here reminds me to do that. So if 200 of those students ride their bikes to school, how many do not? So we have 600 students about, okay, and about 200 of them ride their bikes to school. And we want to know how many don't, so we need to subtract to find the difference. And 600 minus 200 is 400. So, again, we are rounding and estimating, so our answer needs to have the word about in front of it. About 400 students do not ride their bikes. Okay? All right, good. Now, go grab page 53. This is going to be your practice and homework page. We're going to do a couple things on here. Okay? Once you have this page, press play again. Okay, if you're back, you're ready with this page. So, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to cross out the words or compatible numbers. Cross that off. Because you're just going to use rounding to estimate. Okay? You're not even solving the real problem. You're just rounding and then finding the estimated difference for all of these. Okay? You do not have to solve the real problem. If this helps you remember, you can do this. Just don't scribble all over your page. Okay. These problems here, do not let them confuse you. They're the same thing. Okay? Now I'm going to leave this one for you. I'm going to do this one because one of these numbers in your subtraction problem is a 2-digit number. So that means we need to round both of these to the nearest 10. And I'm going to do that with you. Just because your subtraction problem is going horizontally instead of vertically doesn't mean the problem is different or your answer is different or how you work it is different. Okay? So 299 rounded to the nearest 10 is 300. 61 rounded to the nearest 10 is 60. Now, 300 minus 60. You might say, I don't know how to do that in my head. Well, you can write it out to the side if you want, if it helps you out. Okay? Or you can do the trick of just pretend the 2 zeros aren't there and ask yourself, what's 30 minus 6? Go ahead and count back. What is 30 minus 6? 24. Good. And then put the zeros back. And when you put the zeros back, that means on the answer too. So now that the zeros are back, they all get zeros. So 300 minus 60 is 240. If you took off the zeros on the end of each of these numbers, 30 minus 6 is 24. It's the same. Okay? So over here, I want you to do the same thing. You can round to the nearest 100 and subtract across to get your estimated difference. Now look down here at your word problems. Ben has a collection of 812 stamps. I hope you are circling. He gives his brother 345 stamps. Now, if someone gives something away, then are they adding to what they have or are they taking away from what they have? Good, they're taking away from what they have. So I'm going to box the word gives because that's a clue word for me that I'm probably going to be subtracting. About, there's another clue word for estimation. And I'm going to underline my question. About how many stamps does Ben have left? Most of the time when you see the word have left in a question, that's also a clue word for subtraction. You're going to be doing the same thing down here that you did up here. Round, get your answer, and that is your estimated difference. And since you're estimating, your answers need to have about blank stamps. On this line, you need to have your rounded number minus your rounded number equals blank. Show your work. Okay? Look at number 10. Savannah's Bakery sold 284 loaves of bread. So if they sold something, did they add to what they have or did they take away from what they have? They took away. Good. So I'm going to box sold and put a minus sign because that's a clue word. In October, the bakery, sold, clue word, 89 loaves. About how many more loaves of bread? How many more is another subtraction clue. Did Savannah's Bakery sell in September than, another clue word, October. Okay, so you need to have rounded number minus rounded number equals your estimation. One of your numbers is a 2-digit number, so pay attention to that. Because you rounded, then your answer needs to begin with about blank. What is it? About blank bread? No. About blank loaves of bread. Down here on number 11, go ahead and cross out 2 different ways. And I just want you to round and estimate and get your answer for this problem right here, okay? That's all I want you to do. On the back, you are going to do the same thing we did here, okay? Right here. Your words, I see clue words, there's about. You are going to round and estimate to find your difference here. That means your answer should say about blank and then whatever your label is. Okay? Down here, these are review questions. That's why it says spiral review. And they are reviewing things that we've already learned this year in 3rd grade math. So, you have 2 assignments to do. I'm going to send you a interactive video that I want you to complete, and then I also want you to finish the front and back of this page, okay? And you do not have to send it to me. I am trusting that you are going to follow directions and complete this assignment. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.